I'm King Link, and this week I want to take a look at Horizon Zero Dawn. Actually, well, you see, I don't really want to dive deep on this one, but this game's been out for the longest time on PS4, and I kept hearing about it. It's now on PC, so I wanted to take a look at it. Of course, it's popular and it just came out, but this is the great PS4 title everyone was raving about. Let me start by saying I'm coming to this game in 2020. I've heard about it for over 3 years as PlayStation fans have been bragging about what a killer title this is in their console war. Multiple critics have raved about Horizon Zero Dawn, and I was ready for a Sony masterpiece. I just don't know if I got that. Now, I think I need to do a little legwork here. I apologize, it's just how I keep my conscience clean. I need to do a disclosure. I worked at Sony for 6 years on the MLB team. I worked on about 7 shipped titles of MLB. I had no contact with outside studios. Though I think at another point my resume did reach Guerrilla Games' desk. Nothing really came of it, but it was through a recruiter in Europe, so I'm not sure. Neither of these should matter for this video, but I feel like I should make that clear so you can best judge my opinions. Second, I played this on Steam, that's why this video is coming out in 2020, but I experienced only one technical issue with the PC version of the game. The performance for this game was terrible after the shaders were compiled. Admittedly, a reboot fixed it, but I dislike the idea of compiling shaders myself. No other game really does that. It feels like the developer isn't familiar with PCs, which, yeah, it's Sony, first port in a while, I get it. I really hope they try again. But it sounds like that one issue actually has been fixed in patch 104. Fine. It wasn't even a serious issue in my opinion, so the thing is I'm unable to do a deep dive into the port's qualities. I also wanted to say I enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn. This video is not intended to be controversial or rage baiting. I try to look at games fairly, but I have some issues with Horizon Zero Dawn. Before we get into the meat of my thoughts on it, let me go over some of the larger pieces that people are going to bring up that I probably could do another 20 minutes on or more. The story in Horizon Zero Dawn is great at times, especially with the reveals of why the world is the way it is. The story isn't told amazingly, and there are several of what I call false choices in the dialogue tree, but in general, I really like the story. Now, the first couple hours, even to the first 5 hours maybe, where Aloy, the main character, grows from a young girl to a woman and then tries out for the tribe is excellent. And most games would actually skip these moments to get to the bigger conflict in the game. However, those moments are perhaps the best in Horizon Zero Dawn, and if the game was only that section, I'd understand where people were coming from. That was just a fantastic opening and well worthy of praise. The robot enemies as well are amazing and feel fresh. Seeing multiple robots in beautiful detail and interacting with them is a thing of beauty. They are a fresh new enemy in an industry that tends not to innovate on what you're attacking. Yes, they are still robots, we've seen that before, but they're interesting looking and acting, and they make the combat better. The graphics are also excellent. Horizon Zero Dawn just looks gorgeous. I'm actually running this on a 2070 and it's shining. Part of that is that the world is beautiful with tons of vistas and locations to see, but another part of that is there's a huge level of technical prowess for the team. Simply amazing. I'm not going to go too deep into any of these because most reviewers have said it all before. Horizon Zero Dawn is a very solid game, but I still struggle with the game itself and the experience. Let me talk about that design. And let's start with the perfect example. Now, again, the combat in Horizon Zero Dawn is solid and fighting enemies can be incredible. Every enemy has weak points that can be damaged and removed. That isn't a perk, but the intended purpose of the combat. Not targeting those weak points takes entirely too long and too many resources, and much of the game points you towards these weak points. Battles with players fighting one-on-one with a medium or large normal enemy with the right gear are some of the best moments of gaming I've had. But if you were listening closely there are a lot of qualifiers there. One-on-one, because adding too many enemies into the combat, such as 2 or 3 medium or large enemies, can be extremely overwhelming. Normal enemies, because there are corrupted versions of enemies that feel like an overcomplication of the formula and just aren't as fun. And the right gear, because different weapons and tiers of weapons have different attacks, and the variety of attacks will help you quite a bit at times. Here's just one battle. This is an early battle where I was fighting against multiple flame bellowbacks, one of the first enemies that I found that became pretty overwhelming quickly. Horizon Zero Dawn isn't as fun when you have to deal with a crowd of enemies. When you fight a crowd of small enemies, you can usually dispatch them quickly enough, but larger enemies easily become a pain. There are, of course, solutions that the game has. Players can tie down one of the enemies, use various traps, but to me, crowd control classes never interested me in MMOs, and I haven't grown to love them anymore here. You can also play heavily stealthy, but that becomes a hit and run or just another form of crowd control. Having to manage enemies just isn't as interesting as tackling a single enemy at a time. Another possibility is that you can override one of your enemies. The quick version of overriding is it's simply an ability that lets you turn an enemy into a friendly unit for a decent amount of time. If you have that ability for a type of monster, that would be a solution. The problem is it turns an interesting fight where you're handling multiple enemies into a fight where you're sitting back and watching Godzilla and Gamera duking it out, or you assist your friendly unit and easily beat the enemy. This all works, of course, but it removes the combat altogether until you get a heavily weakened enemy. I also think the combat isn't that much fun after you take down 3 or 4 of the same enemies in a row. They just become a routine where you use a specific series of attacks, aiming for specific weak points, or use a specific series of arrows to neutralize the enemy. Combat, though, has another problem that I have. There are clear winners and losers in the discussion. If you want to be a warrior or barbarian and push melee attacks, well, that's not going to work here. At least not until the very end of the game, and melee is still a very limited strategy. The opposite problem is found with concentration mode offered by the game. You click a stick and time slows down. It sounds useful, but the thing is, its use is mandatory. I doubt players could have avoided using this on PS4. On PC, maybe keyboard and mouse players will have better luck, but you're going to be using that slowdown mode as much as possible because it's almost a required feature. I just personally feel the combat, which is excellent when you fight a single monster, lacks something when there are larger groups, and at times you will have to fight those larger groups like the corrupted areas. Most of the main missions avoid this and give you ways to avoid tackling 2 enemies head on, and I think that shows the developers understood the problem, but other parts of the game will require this at times, especially when you're roaming around. I'm leaving a lot out here, but my issue is not the ways that you can fight, but rather the open world format works best when you have more variety. If melee, bows, bombs, and ropes all could be used equally, players could choose their strategies. Of course, not every strategy would have to work for every enemy, but that's not the same open nature of the combat that we have here. Just as a quick example of what I would be hoping for, try to think of GTA, where there's usually multiple ways to take out targets in any mission or just running around the streets. Whether it be normal shooting, vehicular combat, drive-bys, rocket launchers, even remote-controlled bombs can have their place in your arsenal if you choose to. Now, this is not to say GTA is a better game. I think for a single encounter, Horizon Zero Dawn is a far better system than most games, actually. It's just that once you find your secret source for the combat in Horizon Zero Dawn, that will work for almost the entire rest of the game, and there's not as much fun exploring other forms of combat because most don't work out. I just feel that this is a piece of the open world format that Horizon Zero Dawn drops. Moving on to the second area I want to focus on this week is the economy, or rather the lack of it. But before I begin, I actually want to applaud Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, this is a $60 title that has no microtransactions at all, has a single piece of DLC, which is a decent-sized expansion, and it is included with a PC game. Kudos. I actually want to take a moment here for this because sadly this is becoming a rarity in the AAA industry, and I appreciate that. I'm actually going to give it some applause here. Alright, applause over. Why the hell are there loot boxes in this game? Like, seriously, loot freaking boxes. Now, okay, I hate loot boxes as I dislike microtransactions and they come hand in hand. Except, not here. I don't think there was a nefarious plot to one day try to monetize the game. I think there's something else at the core here. Bad design. A quick side note. Some people call these any term to avoid calling them loot boxes. Listen, they're randomized items, known as loot, in boxes that you open. To be clear, you can call them whatever you want. I still have an issue with them. My issue here is not with the loot box term. The real issue with loot boxes tends to be the microtransactions that inevitably come with them. My issue here is actually the loot system itself is weak. Let me give a quick theory on why Horizon Zero Dawn has loot boxes, because I think there is a reason. The player has a limited number of resources, gear, and upgrades that you can carry. If you had a full pouch of resources, you might beat a mission, be given some rare resource, but can't carry them, and then what happens? There's actually so many options that could have been made. Give a bonus space that's removed at the first opportunity, allow players to rearrange their inventory on the quest completion screen if they have to, have resources you can't carry right now delivered to any merchant, specific chests somewhere, or a home-based system. There's just a lot of ways this could have been solved. Instead, you earn a loot box and you can carry infinite number of them. As I started the game, a cynical part of me thought this was designed to make players more agreeable to microtransactions in the future or accepting of loot boxes in any game. And okay, maybe that's the goal, but after finishing the game, I can tell you they did a terrible job of it. You've been watching me open loot boxes on the screen. Now this is every loot box that was given to me in my entire playthrough. I've actually opened only 3 of them during gameplay, and they had very specific loot that I was looking for. The thing is, loot here is freaking terrible. Not only is most of this loot almost trash quality, there's very little purpose to having any of them. The loot boxes are neither interesting nor important to open, and I never felt the need for them. About halfway through my playthrough, I actually realized this was a design just to try to deal with giving players randomized loot when they also had an inventory space of limited size. The real problem with this choice is there's no enjoyment from getting or opening these boxes because it's all just generic items. I mean, look at them. So I think typical loot boxes are bad because they're manipulative and they try to push people towards microtransactions. I think the loot boxes in Horizon Zero Dawn are also bad, but mostly because I think they're uninteresting rewards for quests. And before you ask, yes, I think there is a better solution. You see, there's also a level system in Horizon Zero Dawn, but the thing is, I really don't love that system either. In fact, level systems tend to be on my hit list, or shit list if I really want to say it, but not today. However, the skill points and the system that is the purpose of that level system really doesn't work. The skills feel very detached from Aloy and her progression as a character. She just gets random points, and as you get more points, you can unlock 4 skills and get something special at the end of most of the lines. But what if each of the side quests and main quests instead gave Aloy a skill that she could use for the rest of her playthrough? Suddenly, tackling the side quest has additional value because it helps Aloy become a more skilled and a better warrior. Some of the quests could actually tie into the offered skills, the faction of the quest givers might actually matter and maybe give her a specific skill, and the quest givers now become a valued part of the story of Aloy because they helped her on her larger quest. There's also the possibility of longer quest lines that give specialized or powerful equipment. I'd love to see any of that. If you hate the idea of having to find a specific quest giver to get a specific skill, then make the rewards for the quest be the skill points themselves rather than experience points. But I think earning a specific skill would be more interesting if that skill felt like it was part of the story of that quest. There are early quests that actually do this, including the first trip to the Cauldron, where Aloy gets the power to override. This is one of the most important skills in the game, and it came from a quest progression. Getting specific gear, outfits, and skills would make each quest feel far more rewarding than they are now. The stories themselves in the quest are good, but the result is what's lacking here. Instead of meaningful progression, Horizon Zero Dawn gives generic XP and even more generic loot. That means you gain a level and get some skill points, but both of these are gameplay systems rather than tangible rewards that Aloy could earn. Both the loot and the skill systems feel empty, and having the ability to carry all the boxes that you can and select skills from a list break the immersion that the game has built for itself. You know, I just think of a young kid who's asking Aloy to do some task for him. She does it, and then in a heartfelt moment, he actually gives her like an important trinket that's important to that kid, and Aloy carries for the rest of the game. Stuff like that is what's meaningful. The economy of Horizon Zero Dawn itself relies on players getting specific loot, which combines with the main currency of the game, like metal shards, that allows you to buy better weapons and armor. The issue is, players can get the top tier bows relatively early in the game. The real challenge is gaining a specific city that doesn't take too long if you know where it is, and then taking down specific enemies for the right loot, which is also relatively easy if you know what you're doing. Especially as you gain more and more of these top tier weapons, that becomes an easier thing. Aloy doesn't really grow in power with the levels, it's just something that happens with the weapons. There are a few skills that are really useful, but outside of them, most of them just feel like minor improvements. Players also can go to cauldrons to get new overrides for different enemies. That's really about it. Honestly, the progression of Aloy feels like it drops off a cliff very quickly. The open world aspects of Horizon Zero Dawn also feel a bit weak. Now, what does an open world game have? Well, most people are going to say towers to climb. Yes, those are here. Though this time they are moving beasts. They're moving beasts that you can't anger or damage, so they're just moving towers essentially. There is also a difference where they're not that helpful, but they're also only required for trophies, so they're less useful than a typical open world game. There's also a lot of collectibles, but even collecting a group of them give you a loot box again that just gives you modifications, weak ones. Some of the collectibles are interesting, but many of them require looting a specific pile or item. The story collectibles, such as what happened before the collapse of the world that you'll be seeing on screen, are the ones worth hunting, but the others are just because you need collectibles in an open world game for something for them to do. The world is beautiful and vibrant and filled with locations to explore. That's actually what I wanted from Death Stranding, and it really works here. But with the map of collectibles practically given away for free, there's not a ton of reasons to explore most of the game, mostly due to the weak collectible nature. You see, I think everything that Horizon Zero Dawn does well is not because it's an open world game. If this game was completely linear, focused on the missions, much of the praise I would have for the game would remain, and actually would increase because I don't have the negatives around it. I think in a way, studios are moving to the open world format for a few reasons, and the big one is that they sell well, have a large amount of playtime so fans are happy, and is a reason for a studio to get a massive budget and headcount. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but I think there needs to be something more at the core of an open world game than, wow, we could get more money for it. Maybe I'm getting burnt out, though. I've counted up my personal list of games I've played this year or talked about, and there's at least 10, maybe 15 that would be open world games. That's more than one a month, and consider that these tend to take me maybe 2 weeks to play, 20 plus hours for each of them. The thing is, I like the idea of the open world game, but it has become a format that's popular, yet it feels like a majority of them go through the motions, and Horizon Zero Dawn feels like that. But what bothers me more is the amount of hype around Horizon Zero Dawn. And maybe there is a reason, but I don't think it's a good one. Listen, if you love Horizon Zero Dawn, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing truly terrible about this game. It is very enjoyable, and it could be improved on, but I think it works as it is. But similar to Guerrilla's previous franchise, Killzone, I don't fully get the love. Or, okay, maybe I do. Because I don't get the love of Halo either, especially that original trilogy. I keep hearing how amazing all of the Gears games are, but after the first one, I don't think so. You see, I think honestly we're talking about the console war here. I don't want to really dive headfirst into this topic today, but I feel that Killzone, Horizon Zero Dawn, Halo, and Gears gets touted as amazing games more because people want to defend their side in the console war because it's their identity. There's also the possibility that people play a very narrow section of games and only play exclusives. If you've never played an open world game before, Horizon Zero Dawn would seem amazing. The thing is, all of this is a horrible thing because it just feels like it's impossible to hear about exclusives anymore and not wonder if the hype is actually real or just fans trying to win for their chosen team. Two final points I want to bring up. Now, many of the issues I have with Horizon Zero Dawn's base game were actually fixed with the DLC, the Frozen Wilds. It is short, but it does do almost everything right. So I am interested to see if they can actually turn this entire series around and deliver a perfect game on the sequel. And in case anyone wants to say, I'm just a biased PC gamer, or maybe I am, I want all of Sony's games on PC, truthfully, especially Spider-Man, respect the hyphen, which is oh so worthy of the hype. And for Xbox, both Ori games, but especially Blind Forest, is an incredible journey and well worth playing. That's what I have for Horizon Zero Dawn. So, what do you guys think? Am I being too hard on this game, or is Horizon Zero Dawn just a little bit overhyped? Just a little bit. What hype have you bought into that turned out to be false? If you've made it this far, I've done something right, so consider clicking that subscribe button and ringing that bell to see what I'll post next, even if you just want to hate watch it. Or maybe share this video with someone you think will enjoy it as well. Because this wasn't controversial enough, next time I'm going to be talking positively about EA. Clearly, I'm trying to get burned at the stake. I'm going to be popping up 2 videos here. First up, this was Sony, so let's talk about Death Stranding again as well. And second up, I'm going to be throwing it back to the beginning of this year to one of my last true reviews and talk about the Xbox exclusive Sunset Overdrive. See, I'm impartial. Until then, I'm King Link, and thank you for watching.